What's going on, everybody? Just announced we've got Michael Chandler making his debut at UFC 257 against Dan the Hangman Hooker. Great fight. Drake, what's your reaction to this? Is this a great fight in your opinion? Is it not a great fight?
Yes. Yes. I think that this is a great fight. I mean, I think that pretty much any fight, but for either of these guys is a great fight because they're both very, very exciting fighters. Yeah, I'm all for this. I mean, if you look at Michael Chandler coming into the UFC, in my books, top 10 middleweight. What am I talking about? Lightweight. Top 10 lightweight worldwide. I probably have him about the 5'6" range, 5'6" area, right around there. And then Dan Hooker, Dan Hooker's up there too, of course. And you look at what is happening just in the division with everybody who's already lined up and all that. It's pretty much the best option. Pretty much the best option outside of, let's say, Justin Gaethje, if you really want to throw him right up there, which that is my pretty much dream matchup. Of all matchups outside of like Aldo Cruz, that's the one I think is just guaranteed amazement. I need Chandler versus Gaethje at some point in my life. But Chandler versus Hooker, I will absolutely take it. I think that this is just fine matchmaking. And kind of, I mean, the only option, especially considering how the UFC has treated Chandler so far. So yeah, it's no surprise here for me.
Yeah, from a business perspective, I mean, they had to give Chandler somebody like this, right? Like they've been treating him already. He was the backup for Gaethje versus Habib, right? Or that was, they're already treating him as an elite guy. They've tried to make fights with him with Tony Ferguson, apparently. You have to give him a top 5 dude. Out of that top 5 range, I agree Hooker is the best option. I believe when we previewed who Michael Chandler should fight, I mentioned Dan Hooker because I thought that was a great matchup. So I like the matchup on paper in terms of from a business perspective. But after going back and looking at both of their previous fights, especially recently, I have some strong opinions about this. Before I get into those, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Hit the notifications button. Be part of the 10% of the elite to get notifications whenever we drop a video because we love you and we want you to know about it first. So do that. That being said, I think Dan Hooker demolishes Michael Chandler. I think he straight up wipes the floor with him. And here's I'm going to tell you why, Drake, because I know you've got strong opinions the other way.
Where's my lighter? Again.
So here's the thing. When you look at Hooker's recent run, right? I mean, he's been on a tear against some of the best strikers in the lightweight division. You had the fight with Dustin Poirier alone, right? I for one, did not think he was going to do that well against Poirier. I thought that was kind of a mismatch where I thought Poirier was going to easily take that win. Hooker surprised the heck out of me. I mean, it was just nonstop stand and bang. The man has a granite chin. His TKO loss to Edson Barboza was because he got kicked in the stomach too many times and he didn't even really quit. The ref just called it off because he wouldn't quit. The man is made of iron. He just eats shots. It's ridiculous. And so looking through the wars he's been in, but then how well he's done and how he's progressively gotten better. The Felder war didn't make him worse. It made him better, which is also telling me a lot in terms of him as a fighter. I think, he's younger. He's on his way up. I think he's going to be a big force in this division and he's going to be around title contention soon, I would imagine. And then you've got Chandler, who's kind of on the other end of this. He's a little bit older. He's 34, so not too old, but he's had a long run. He's had those wars with Eddie Alvarez, the fights with Will Brooks. He's had all this stuff that happened when he was, the guy. And then he was still the guy in Bellator for a while. But if you look at the guys he's fought recently, I mean, you've got Brandon Gertz, Brent Primus, of course, Pitbull, who knocked him out, Sidney Outlaw, and then Benson Henderson. In terms of, so his last 5. Other than Pitbull, I mean, Henderson's a name, sure. And Yamaguchi and Primus have done all right against guys that you probably haven't heard too much about. Brandon Gertz has done terrible. I mean, it's one of those things where it's not that he's looked bad against them because he hasn't. He's looked good But to me, the level of competition and just the age, I don't see it. I think Pitbull was a good example of how someone can take advantage of Chandler's vulnerabilities. And I'm not sold that he's this all-star wrestler that he once was in the Alvarez fights. I'm not sold that he's still there. And I think Hooker's going to run straight through him, especially since Hooker has an 80% takedown defense and is going to, stuff him. And if it's on the feet, I can't imagine Chandler outstrikes Hooker. So with that being said, Drake, I know I've rambled a little bit. What say you?
You do you, man. I ramble a lot myself, so I'm happy to let someone else do it. I totally understand where you're coming from, and there are question marks, I think, around recent Michael Chandler still, because let's say he came in before, I don't know, I guess even before the Patricio loss, even I'm sure you maybe would be more confident in him coming in here, just like, but not that Patricio is bad. That's definitely the best opponent he's fought probably since, Eddie Alvarez, honestly. So, definitely since Eddie Alvarez. But it's just like still Patricio, a featherweight generally, and as good as he is still, shows that Chandler can be caught and clipped. Whether you think it's controversial or not, that those thoughts have died down a lot since the fight happened. But yeah, Dan Hooker is quite a big lightweight. He is a rather large lightweight. He's going to have the length on Chandler. I would imagine he's like 6 feet tall. Yeah. And then the reach, I guess I do have the stats right here. 75 inch. Yeah, he's going to have slight advantage there in those areas. So, that accompanied by the fact that he is a very diverse and lethal, aggressive striker that Dan Hooker is, and very, very tough. Just those last two fights that he had in particular. And then you look at the Barboza fight where he was getting absolutely just brutalized, but did not go away by his own, desire. Yeah, the guy is very, very hard to put away. Chandler, I think that, he's a very, his combination of wrestling and striking is something that is very unique. I think he's good in both areas. He's very strong in both areas, and it's because of how good, his wrestling aids his striking and his striking aids his wrestling a little bit. So like they go hand in hand and help out his overall skill set a lot better. And I think that his wrestling is definitely still very good. That's probably the biggest question mark for me is, you mentioned Hooker's takedown defense. If Chandler can get him down, I think that he can. It probably won't be easy, but I want to go back and look at the Yamauchi fight, for example. Like Goichi Yamauchi, no joke of a submission artist. And I'm not sure how good his takedown defense was statistically or anything, but like just being able to control and get through that guy. 3 rounds didn't put him away, but a little bit more impressive for me that he was able to survive the full 15 against a guy who puts away pretty much everybody by submission. We just wanted to point that one out. And Chandler, very quick. He's very quick. He has good, combinations and everything. I think he's going to definitely be able to land on Hooker and make him think if he gets, fakes some takedowns or goes for takedowns, just mixes his game up as he usually does. It's going to be interesting to see how he approaches this with all this new hype that has been loaded onto him kind of unceremoniously, right? Not that he hasn't earned it, like he has, but it still feels random to me because he's not the champion anymore. Like he's still one of the best in the world, in my opinion, deserves all of this, but like, it's just weird to see it. It's weird that the UFC has done this with a guy who wasn't the champion when he left, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know if that'll affect him. He seems like a very strong-minded guy and always has. But if you want to look at great examples of his mindset, go back to the first Alvarez fight. Nobody knew who this guy was essentially, and they all counted him out. That was the star-making performance for Chandler. Alvarez was arguably the number 1 in the world at the time, and he went out there, almost knocked Eddie out in like 20 seconds, and then they go on to have the best fight ever. I think that's the best fight ever, honestly. That's one of my favorites. It's up there if you don't agree with me. But I think that's a great example. Young Chandler wasn't rattled by that moment. And of course, this will be different now, but no fans. I think that helps anybody debuting, especially somebody who's being hyped up like Chandler. Now I'm rambling. Let's just put it this way. I I do not think Hooker is going to run through Chandler by any means, but it wouldn't be surprising if he beats him. But yeah, I'm excited for it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, make sure to let us know in the comments who you think is going to win this fight. Am I wrong for thinking Hooker's going to run through him? I mean, you make some great points there, Drake, and it's true. He could go out there. He could look, like a world class, top 5 in the world guy. He could out wrestle Hooker. He could get it done. I could see that happening. There is a possibility there. I guess looking at, again, just those more recent factors, looking at the fact that Hooker is surging right now, right? That to me is a big test in and of itself. I don't think Hooker is an easy out for anyone right now, let alone a guy whose last fight was against Benson Henderson, who, again, Henderson was great and is a big name, but he is clearly, age has caught up with him. And there's just no way around it. And so to go from that level of competition up to a surging Dan Hooker, I mean, another thing I look at is Justin Gaethje, right? We had a lot of questions about him when he first came into the UFC. Was undefeated, had crazy wild fights, had some fights where, they weren't exactly the easiest, but they were against people that weren't big names. And a lot of people were kind of, I don't know about this. We'll see. Maybe we write him off. And they gave him Michael Johnson, who at the time was still, had a setback or two. Wasn't on the up and up, right? I think that was important because even though I'm still pretty sure Gaethje would have ended up winning the fight, I think that's an easier test when a guy needs a bounce back versus, he is currently just climbing the ranks and looking really good as he does it. And yes, he lost the Poirier fight, but I think, in my mind, he looked better than he probably ever had.
Stock rising loss, right?
Yeah. Yes. So, at this point, we'll see what happens. I just, we've seen this with former Bellator champions. Will Brooks, the man that beat Chandler twice, soundly came over and
so
just
sad.
That is one of the saddest things. I feel for Will Brooks because, he showed flashes of brilliance in the UFC and then just, got in his own head in a couple of those fights, and then that was that. But he was the dude to beat Chandler decisively twice. And then, he ends up coming over not doing so hot. We've seen it with Hector Lombard, even with Alvarez to an extent, who first lost to Cerrone and then got a couple of split decision wins that were kind of and then got the belt, right? I mean, so I guess using those indicators, I'm going to bank on Hooker myself, but I hear all the points you're making and I could very well be wrong.
I wanted to look at a little bit too at the end, more towards the end of the Dustin Poirier fight too with Hooker, because I think I answered this own question in my head as I was thinking about it, but I want to present it to you because, at the end of the fight, I think it's safe to say that Hooker slowed down a bit significantly. But do you think that was more because of kind of the pressure and lack of slowing down that Poirier had and just kept pouring it on throughout the whole fight and kind of made him, have to worry about it the whole time and drained him a little bit more? Because, I mean, I answer that. I say I answer that because if you look at the Felder fight, it didn't really happen with him because Felder wasn't able to be as aggressive. But assuming Chandler can, make this a war while mixing in his wrestling, I don't know. Do you think that his gas tank would hold up as the fight goes on? Because I think Chandler has proven, for the most part, that he can hang in the later rounds, even though he did lose that 5th round in the first Benson fight, as Benson came on strong way too late. So, I mean, I guess the ultimate question here is who has the more of the edge as the fight goes on, right? That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, no, and that's a great question to look at because, yes, I think if it gets into later rounds, right? Because I also think a stoppage.
I guess this isn't
happen.
the main event, though, right? I should reel that back.
Yeah, this isn't the main event. But even then, even then, though, I mean, if they're going at full, pedal to the metal in round 1, it's very possible by round 3 one of them starts to tire, and I think. At that point, I would say Hooker's probably a little bit more susceptible, although he held up against Poirier. But there were some times in both the Felder and Poirier fight where he slowed down a little bit and then revved up again throughout the middling and championship rounds. So, in this case, I don't know. We'll have to see because as you pointed out with Benson Henderson came on strong at the end. So I think Chandler's susceptible to it too. I don't know. It could go either way. It is only 3 rounds. Could be just, start to finish fireworks. I expect that's what it will probably end up being for as long as it lasts. I think a finish is possible. I don't know if it'll happen or not, but I could see a finish happening either way. Honestly, no. Wait, I take that back. I think Hooker could finish Chandler. I'm not sure Chandler would be able to finish Hooker just because of how hard it is to do. But it should be a great fight if that man you talked about when you were describing Chandler is still there. If he's still there, then this should be an incredible fight. If I miss Mr. Pessimist, if my prediction comes true, I think Dan Hooker is going to knock him out in round 1, and it's going to be a sad day for Michael Chandler.
Boy. It'll be a sad day for everybody who roots for Bellator fighters.
Yeah. Sad day for them. Sad day for the UFC with all the hype. It's just
that too.
Day. It's just going to be a sad day all around. So let us know what you think. Drake, anything else to wrap this one up?
I do agree with the assessment that if anybody's getting a knockout finish, it'll probably be Dan Hooker. I mean, I think that he's as hard as and precise as Chandler has shown to be as a striker and a puncher, more specifically, like very accurate and hits very hard with the speed. He just very fluid when you look at it. But take the opponents into consideration if you'd like. Hooker though, just mad tough, just ridiculously tough. I would be very impressed if Chandler can put him away with strikes at any point in this fight. I think it would be more realistic that, who's going to get the submission, who's more likely to get the submission. It'll be Chandler, knockout in favor of Hooker. That's how I would look at that. And then as for final notes, I mean, this fight is booked for the McGregor, or supposed to be for the McGregor Poirier 2 one, right? So is this a mini tournament potential? An unofficial tournament, maybe, Pat?
Could be, or dare I say, if Poirier or McGregor get coronavirus and have to pull out. I think that's an automatic elevation for Chandler. I don't think Hooker gets that call. I think Chandler probably gets the call there. So could be mini tournament, backup fight, whatever you want to call it. Should be great. We'll see what happens. And Dan Hooker is made of granite. You can quote me on that.
He's made of Wolverine.
Positive.
What is it? Adamantium.
Adamantium. I'm pretty sure USADA needs to go test for if people are made of stone or not, because that Dan needs to be tested for that. So.
Knock on his forehead. Ooh.